Hey guys, welcome to Cape and Cowl Cafe. I'm Nemo, and today we're going to be ranking my top 10 favorite Batman villains of all time. If you guys enjoy the video at any point today, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that like and subscribe button, but let's hop right in. Alright, starting off the list at number 10, we have Killer Moth. I think Killer Moth is just such an underrated Batman villain, and not every villain has to be some kind of major threat to the Dark Knight. Some can just be a little silly. Killer Moth first appeared in Batman number 63 in 1951. Drury Walker was a small-time criminal who was constantly overshadowed by bigger, more successful crooks. Frustrated with living in fear of Batman, he decided to flip the dynamic. He created a Moth-themed costume, he developed gadgets meant to counter Batman's methods, he built a Moth signal, a parody of the Bat signal that criminals could use when they needed help, and he even had a teenage sidekick, which was some kind of twisted reflection of Robin. Crazy. Despite this extremely theatrical presentation, he was never really a competent villain and was always outmatched and easily outclassed by the Dark Knight. Now, over the years, DC has reinvented Killer Moth a number of times, but at his core, he remains just a dumb, silly villain that is just fun, and he also serves as a satirical parody of Batman. I really wish that we got to see him more. Maybe he could appear in a movie as just like some kind of, I don't know, dumb side villain. Who knows? But either way, I love Killer Moth. I think he's really fun. Alright, next up at number 9, we have Bane. Now, while I do think that Bane's introduction is one of the best that we've had for a villain, I think that all of his subsequent stories kind of fall flat, but the concept of Bane as a villain is still just so peak. Bane is definitely one of Batman's most dangerous enemies, a villain defined by both brute strength and strategic genius. Born and raised in the brutal Peña Duro prison on the fictional Caribbean island of Santa Prisca, Bane served a life sentence from childhood because of his father's crimes. Growing up behind bars, he trained his mind and body to peak human condition, studying books obsessively while surviving constant violence in the prison. As an adult, he volunteered for experiments involving the super steroid known as Venom, which granted him immense super strength but required regular doses through tubes connected to his body. Determined to prove himself, Bane traveled to Gotham, systematically wore Batman down by releasing Arkham's inmates, then famously defeated him by breaking his back during the events of Batman Nightfall. I think Bane is just so cool, and I really wish that DC would do more things with him that weren't just kind of lame. Like, I don't know, Nightfall just really set the bar so high, and I really think that after Batman beat Bane at the end of that story, Bane should have just quit, you know? There was nothing left for him to do, okay? He had already reached his peak as a character and as a villain. There was nowhere to go but down. And just more proof that Bane peaked in Nightfall, every other interpretation of the character is just terrible and completely butchered. About half of the games, shows, and movies that he appear in, just show him as some kind of dumb brute with super strength, when that's not what he is. Arkham Asylum, even though, that's peak Batman media, they completely butchered his character. Why is he stupid? He shouldn't be. He is a very intelligent individual, and it took Arkham Origins to come in and fix all that and make Bane a peak villain again. What the hell? Anyway, I really like Bane, I just wish he was more consistent. Alright, next up at number 8, we have the Court of Owls. Now, this isn't one villain, but a whole group of them. And I know some people don't really like the Court of Owls as a concept, but I love it. I love the whole secret society thing, and I love that story from the New 52. I think it's so peak. The Court of Owls is a secret society of wealthy elites who have secretly controlled Gotham for centuries. Operating from the shadows, they manipulate politics, business, and crime while using undead assassins called Talons to eliminate threats. Bruce Wayne initially dismisses the court as a myth, a nursery rhyme told to Gotham children, but after he publicly announces his plans to reshape Gotham through Wayne Industries, he becomes their next target. Batman is ambushed, trapped in an underground labyrinth beneath the city, and psychologically broken as he realizes Gotham was never truly his to protect. The storyline ends with the court launching a coordinated attack across Gotham in Night of the Owls, sending Talons after key figures. Though Batman stops the immediate threat, the court's existence shatters his belief that he understands his own city. I just think the Court of Owls is such a good idea, and the very concept challenges Bruce's ego and challenges the notion that Bruce knows this city better than anyone. After the story, we're kind of left wondering if he really does. I don't know, I'm always a sucker for the secret society stories. I'm not a huge fan of how the Court of Owls story ended with Bruce Wayne's supposed brother coming back from the dead to, fight him. I thought that was kind of lame, but as a concept, the Court of Owls is cool. Alright, next up at number 7, we have the Ventriloquist and Scarface. Such an underrated supervillain duo. I love them a lot. I was so happy to see them appear in Batman Dark Patterns. I wish they would show up more often. Arnold Wesker, better known alongside his puppet alter ego Scarface, is one of Batman's most psychologically tragic villains. Arnold Wesker is a meek, timid man suffering from dissociative identity disorder. Unable to cope with trauma and constant bullying in prison, he creates a second personality embodied in a wooden ventriloquist dummy named Scarface. While Wesker is nervous and submissive, Scarface is loud, cruel, and obsessed with old-school gangster theatrics, speaking in a 1920s mobster accent and constantly belittling Wesker. Scarface becomes the dominant personality, forcing Wesker into a life of crime. Together, they form small criminal gangs, with Scarface acting as the mob boss and Wesker serving as his reluctant muscle and voice. Importantly, Scarface can't speak unless Wesker is holding him, but psychologically, Wesker truly believes the dummy is alive and in control. Their dynamic represents one of Gotham's clearest examples of fractured identity. Wesker doesn't want to be a criminal, but Scarface absolutely does. Over the years, different versions of Scarface have existed, and Wesker has died and been replaced at times, but the core concept remains the same. A broken man projecting his violent impulses into a wooden puppet who runs his criminal empire. Now, what I like about this villain so much is they never really tell you straight up what's going on. They never confirm if the puppet is actually alive, if it's magic, if it's all in his head, and, maybe it's just Wesker trying to, not take accountability for his actions and his dark impulses, but they never really confirm that. They kind of leave it up to the reader to decide. And, sometimes they do lean into the supernatural elements. I think it's so interesting how they kind of leave it up to the reader like that. It's so cool. It's kind of like the Two-Face story, but in a slightly different font. It's really interesting. All right, next up at number 6, we have the Riddler, one of Batman's most iconic rogues and the bane of my existence as I was playing through the Arkham series. Now, as we all know, the Riddler commits elaborate crimes built around riddles, wordplay, and intricate traps. But his defining flaw is that he literally has to leave clues. He can't help it. He cannot resist proving his brilliance, which gives Batman the opening he needs to solve the puzzle and stop him. These moments of defeat just send the Riddler deeper into insanity and causes him to become more desperate to prove himself. It's a never-ending cycle. Unlike purely physical villains, the Riddler challenges Batman mentally. Many stories portray him as someone who craves recognition, not just money or power, but validation that he is smarter than the so-called world's greatest detective. Now, I like seeing the Riddler in Batman stories a lot, because the Riddler is always portrayed as some unlikable asshole, and it's really satisfying when Batman beats the crap out of him. It's really that simple. Alright, next up at number 5, we have Scarecrow, a villain who is a sort of a mirror to Batman, because while Batman uses fear to protect the innocent, Scarecrow uses it to terrorize them. Now obviously, Scarecrow primarily uses fear as his weapon. He deploys his fear toxin, a chemical that manipulates the victim's mind, often forcing them to confront their deepest phobias in realistic and psychologically torturous hallucinations. Now, he's not always written to be like this, but one of my favorite things about Scarecrow is when he is jealous of Batman's ability to strike fear into his enemies. Because Batman just does it naturally. He doesn't need chemicals or science or fear toxin. He's just scary. And the Scarecrow wants to be that desperately, and that's why he hates Batman. And so a lot of Scarecrow's motivations come down to making Batman afraid. If he can make the world's scariest man afraid, then, he's won. It's really interesting stuff. I really like Scarecrow. I think his appearance in Arkham Knight probably had to be one of his best appearances, even though I did get kind of sick of all the speeches going on. Alright, next up at number 4, I have a really underrated Batman villain. We got Hugo Strange. Now, Hugo Strange is kind of like the Scarecrow, where he likes to do a lot of experiments on random people, but I feel like his cruelness is dialed up to 11. Now, Strange's schemes often revolve around mind control, genetic experiments, and psychological manipulation. He has created various superhuman soldiers, cloned individuals, including twisted versions of Bruce Wayne, and used elaborate schemes to destabilize Gotham. Unlike other villains, he doesn't usually indulge in chaos for chaos's sake. His plans are meticulously calculated, aiming to prove his superiority over Batman and humanity itself. What a sick guy, Now, one of the most interesting things about Hugo Strange is the fact that he knows that Bruce Wayne is Batman. Now, why doesn't he tell everyone? It's because he views Batman as some kind of scientific experiment, and if the whole world knows who Batman is, and Batman is forced to go away, the experiment is over, and Hugo Strange's fun is ruined. Alright, next up at number 3, we have Two-Face, one of Batman's greatest villains ever. So iconic. His performance in The Dark Knight was just legendary, but I mean, we all know who Two-Face is, right? You gotta. It's Two-Face. Harvey Dent was once Gotham City's idealistic and brilliant district attorney, fighting crime and corruption alongside Batman and Commissioner Gordon. However, his life took a tragic turn when a mobster, Sal Maroni, threw acid in his face during a trial, horribly scarring the left side of his face. This traumatic event triggered a psychological break, revealing a dark, vengeful side that he had repressed since childhood. From that moment on, Dent became Two-Face, a villain obsessed with duality, chance, and justice on his own terms. Now, one of the best things about Two-Face is the fact that he was once Batman's friend. You know, there are not a lot of Batman villains that have a personal connection to Bruce Wayne and Batman. He was friends with both. You know, he worked with Batman and Jim Gordon in the Long Halloween story, and he was a personal friend to Bruce Wayne. So that just adds to the tragedy of the story. It's so good. Now, obviously, a lot of this is explored heavily in the Long Halloween and Batman Dark Victory. If you have not read those two stories, what are you doing? Like, pause the video, go read them, and then come back, you know, because I need that ad revenue. Anyway, Two-Face is the GOAT. All right, at number 2, I have the Joker. That's right, he's not my number 1 Batman villain. He's up there, though. He's really interesting. Now, the best thing about the Joker is he's not in it for money or power, he's in it for the love of the game. The Joker thrives on anarchy and psychological terror. His crimes range from mass murders, kidnappings, and bank heists to elaborate schemes designed purely to torment Gotham or challenge Batman. Unlike villains motivated by money or power, his goal is often to create chaos, test moral limits, and prove philosophical points about the fragility of sanity. He is a master manipulator, strategist, and chemist, frequently using deadly toxins, explosives, and elaborate traps. Now, the Joker and Batman have one of the most iconic rivalries in fiction. He sees Batman as the ultimate challenge and obsession, often framing his crimes as tests of Batman's morality and resolve. Their relationship is symbiotic. Batman is the only person who can counteract the Joker's chaos, and the Joker exists in opposition to Batman's order and justice. The Joker often claims that he does not want to kill Batman, but wants to break him, proving that he and the Dark Knight are two sides of the same coin. His ultimate goal is to make Batman break his one rule. Now, Joker is at his best when he is written like this. You know, I think the Joker is used way too much, and I was super pissed off by the way he was used in DCKO. That was just ridiculous. But man, when Joker is written well, he is written well. Alright, and at number 1, my favorite Batman villain of all time is Mr. Freeze. Victor Freeze was a brilliant scientist specializing in cryogenics. His life took a tragic turn when his wife Nora became terminally ill. Desperate to save her, Freeze attempts to preserve her in cryogenic state until a cure can be found. A laboratory accident, often involving chemicals or some kind of explosion, transformed him into Mr. Freeze, forcing him to live in sub-zero temperatures and requiring a cryogenic suit to survive. This accident also drives his obsession with finding a cure for Nora, often making him commit crimes to fund his research. Now, Batman often faces Mr. Freeze with a mix of sympathy and duty. While Freeze's actions are criminal, his motivations are tragic and somewhat understandable, making him one of the more sympathetic members of Batman's rogues gallery. Batman sometimes tries to reason with him, appealing to his humanity and the memory of Nora, but Freeze's obsession with saving her often overrides morality. I just love the tragic nature of Mr. Freeze's backstory, and he's just so compelling because he really is the victim of his own origin story. He's not the villain. Ferris Boyle was. I also recently read Mr. Freeze's short story in the One Bad Day series, and it was just so peak. I love how Batman was initially just going to treat him like any other villain, and then Robin is the one that suggests that they treat him with a little more kindness and lend a helping hand. It's just, he's so compelling. He's so good. Plus, Batman operating in the snow is one of the best aesthetics for Batman stories, and, you know, Mr. Freeze provides that all the time, so, like, of course he's the best villain. Why wouldn't he be? Alright guys, that's going to be it for today's video. If you guys enjoyed it all, I'd really appreciate if you hit that like and subscribe button, and drop in the comments down below your favorite Batman villain. Let's talk about it. But yeah, until next time, I'll see you guys later.